Welcome to another edition of Know Your History. Today we're going to be talking about English expressions, military terms that have become part of the English vernacular. And to help me with this, I've asked my wife, Mrs. Ben, I'm Mr. Ben,
Hi there.
and I'm going to mention these terms to her, and I'm going to see how well she can define them, and you too. Okay.
Honey, by the way, that's an awful big wig you're wearing.
Well, dear, it's not a military term, but the expression bigwig connotes someone who is in authority, someone in charge, because wigs were expensive and only important people could afford them, you see. In the 17th and 18th centuries.
That's not you. Okay.
Well, moving on. With the theme of the 18th century, how about this term? Let's see. This is something that you probably heard quite frequently. Lock, stock, and barrel.
Well, of course. Isn't that like when my sister goes to Marshall's and buys everything up, lock, stock, and barrel?
I suppose that's true. But in this case, we're talking about, from the 18th century, a soldier who had a musket. The entire musket, the parts of the musket are the lock and the stock, the wooden part, and the barrel. So it really just simply means anything in its entirety. Lock, stock, and barrel. Continuing in that vein, how about this one? Flash in the pan.
Oh, well, that's easy, because isn't that what happened last night's dinner?
Actually, dear, what it really is referring to, the origin of the term is flash in the pan. Again, with the musket, the flintlock or matchlock musket, the flintlock would have a pan. You see, that's the priming pan, and they would sprinkle the powder into the pan, and sometimes the pan would ignite, but it would fail to ignite the main charge in the barrel. So when something went off, it just flashed. A flash in the pan just means a major disappointment. Okay, let's go back in history even further. We'll talk about a medieval term, berserk, or more specifically, going berserk.
That's what I do every time I see a spider.
Yes, you do tend to overreact there, dear, but actually the term refers to Viking warriors who were so hepped up and so ferocious that they were called berserkers, and they were going berserk against the enemy.
He does look a little scary, too.
Yes, he does. Okay, let's maybe you'll do better with this one. This is also a medieval term. It's called a loophole. Looking for a loophole.
Well, everyone knows that one. Isn't that what we all do with our taxes?
Some of us. But actually, it refers to a medieval castle where you'd have loopholes where you could fire your crossbow and not be hit because you'd be hidden in the castle or safely behind the castle walls, firing out of your loophole.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, let's see. How about this one? Turn a blind eye.
Well, that's easy. That's what I always have to do with all your antics.
What antics? Actually, it refers to England's greatest naval hero, Admiral Horatio Nelson, who, when he was just a junior officer, was in command of a ship in a terrific battle, and his commander had ordered his ship to retreat, and with the flag signals. So Horatio Nelson got out his telescope. Now, he had only had one eye that he could see out of. He had been blinded in one eye in a previous battle, but he clapped his telescope to his blind eye and he said, I really can't see the signal. And of course, he sailed off to a great victory, and that's what's known as turning a blind eye. And continuing with our nautical theme, with flying colors.
Ha! I know that one because that's how I do everything with flying colors.
Yes, dear, for the most part. However, what it really means is when a ship in the age of sail would return to port after a great victory, such as Admiral Nelson's, they would crowd on all sail, and from every masthead they would hang their banners and pennants and flags and their flying colors. They wanted to announce before they arrived in their home port that they had won a great victory. That's what it means, flying with flying colors.
That's cool.
Now, this expression comes from World War I, the Great War. Over the top. Now, what do you think that means, dear?
Are you talking about my sister again?
I could be. No, we're not referring to your sister, my beloved sister-in-law. We're actually talking about the soldiers in World War I. Now, on the Western Front, it was a very static war, and the soldiers would be in trenches unless they were going to attack the enemy. They would have to cross no man's land, but first they would have to come out of their trenches and be subject to the enemy's fire, and that was called going over the top.
Interesting.
Yes, I know. You don't have to tell me. Also, from World War I, try this one. Basket case.
Oh, are you talking about my other sister?
I could be. Actually, what it means, sadly, is by the time of World War I, medical advances had gotten to the point where a soldier could survive multiple amputations, even a quadruple amputation. And unfortunately, though, this soldier is coming home in a basket. So he was referred to as a basket case.
I don't like that one. That's pretty sad.
Okay, well, in World War II, I already gave it away, but it's German, so it's called Flack. This is the German word, Fliegerabwehrkanone. Pardon me, all you German folks out there, but it's abbreviated Flack. And what do you think that means, dear?
Well, that's easy, honey. Isn't that what I take from you all the time?
Sometimes.
Just kidding.
Actually, the flak was what the German cannons, specifically the German 88, the most feared cannon in the German army's arsenal. They would throw up a barrage of shells that the Allied bombers would have to fly to reach their targets, so they would have to fly through the flak. So that's what it means. That's where it comes from, and what it means when you give someone flak. All right, dear. This is our last one, and let's see how you do with this one. It's the term head honcho.
Well, that's what you call yourself around here.
Not really. What the head honcho refers to is right after World War II, the American GIs who were stationed in occupied Japan picked up the term from the Japanese, who would refer to their officers, their leaders, as a honcho. And they would say, somebody in an important office, they'd say, oh, he's the head honcho. And like this gentleman.
He looks like a head honcho. Kind of scary.
Head honcho or a head hunter.
Mm.
Well, dear, I'm afraid that we're out of time, and you are 0 for 10. That's batting 0. That's not a very good batting average, I'm afraid.
I wonder where that comes from.
Never mind. Thanks for watching Know Your History, and hope to see you next time. Sayonara.
Bye.